When you picture the Caribbean, you see turquoise water so clear you can count the fish from shore. White sand beaches that squeak under your feet like fresh snow. Palm trees swaying in warm ocean breezes. The kind of paradise you need a passport, a 12-hour flight, and usually a significant chunk of your savings to reach. The kind of place that costs $3,000 for a week. But what if I told you Australia has 6 places that look exactly like those Caribbean postcards, and most travellers have never heard of them? Not the Whitsundays, which get plastered across every tourism brochure. Not the Gold Coast with its high-rise hotels and crowds. These are the hidden beaches and islands that Australians keep to themselves. The ones where you can stand knee-deep in water the colour of blue curacao and not see another soul for miles. The places where locals go when they want to escape, but never post about on social media because they'd rather keep them secret. Today, we're diving into 6 Australian destinations that could fool even the most seasoned Caribbean traveller. Places where the water is warmer than Barbados, the beaches are wider than the Bahamas, and the crowds are non-existent compared to Cancun. By the end of this video, you'll be questioning why anyone bothers flying across the Pacific when paradise sits right here in the South Pacific, often just a few hours' drive from a major city. Let's start with the science of why certain beaches look Caribbean in the first place. That iconic turquoise colour comes from a specific combination of factors that need to align perfectly. You need pure white sand made of crushed coral and shells, ground down by waves over thousands of years. You need shallow water over that white sand, ideally between 2 and 6 meters deep. Any deeper and the water looks dark blue instead of turquoise. And you need crystal clear water with minimal sediment, no river runoff, and protection from strong currents that stir up the seafloor. When sunlight hits this combination, the white sand acts like a mirror, reflecting light back up through the clear water. The water absorbs red wavelengths and scatters blue wavelengths, creating that electric blue-green color that makes your camera look like it's malfunctioning. Scientists call it Rayleigh scattering combined with selective absorption. Tourists just call it paradise. Australia has all of these ingredients in abundance. The Great Barrier Reef system produces millions of tons of coral sand every year. The continental shelf creates vast areas of shallow water, particularly along the east coast and around offshore islands. And because many of these locations sit far from major rivers and cities, the water stays pristine. What Australia also has that the Caribbean doesn't is isolation and strict environmental protection. Some of these beaches require boat access only. Others sit on islands with strict visitor caps enforced by law. That's why they've remained secret for so long. You can't accidentally stumble onto them during a road trip. You have to know they exist and plan ahead. Number 1. Lord Howe Island in the Tasman Sea, 600 kilometres off the New South Wales coast, sitting alone in the Pacific Ocean. When UNESCO declared Lord Howe Island a World Heritage Site in 1982, they called it one of the most beautiful island landscapes on Earth. That's not tourism marketing. That's the United Nations looking at satellite imagery of every island on the planet and deciding this one needs immediate protection. Lord Howe Island limits visitors to 400 people at any given time. Not 400 per day, 400 total. That means at any moment, there are 400 tourists, residents, and workers combined on an island that's 11 kilometers long. For comparison, the Caribbean island of Aruba, which is roughly the same size, hosts over 1 million visitors per year. Lord Howe hosts about 15,000 annually. That restriction means on any given morning, you might have an entire crescent of Caribbean blue water completely to yourself. The lagoon on the western side looks like someone photoshopped the Maldives into the Pacific Ocean. The water is so shallow and clear that you can wade out 50 meters from shore and still see your toes on the white sand bottom. The island sits where 2 ocean currents collide. The warm East Australian current meets cold water pushing up from Antarctica. This creates a unique ecosystem where tropical fish from the Great Barrier Reef swim alongside temperate species from Tasmania. You can snorkel with sea turtles in water that's 23 degrees Celsius in winter and 26 degrees in summer. But here's what makes Lord Howe genuinely surreal. The island is a remnant of a 7 million year old shield volcano. At the southern end, two volcanic peaks called Mount Gower and Mount Lidgebird shoot straight up from the ocean like towers. Mount Gower rises 875 meters straight from sea level. You can hike to the summit if you're fit and hire a licensed guide. The climb takes 8 hours round trip. But from the summit, you look down on that turquoise lagoon from 800 meters above, and the view genuinely looks computer generated. Like someone placed a Caribbean atoll next to a volcano in a video game. The island has no mobile phone coverage in most areas, no traffic lights anywhere. Most accommodations don't have televisions. There are more Lord Howe Island stick insects, a species that was thought extinct until 2001, than there are tourists on any given day. And because the island sits on that volcanic remnant, the beaches aren't just white. They're made from pulverized coral mixed with black volcanic sand in some areas, creating beaches with natural swirls of white, black, and pink sand that look hand-painted. It's Caribbean water meeting volcanic drama, and nowhere else on Earth looks quite like it. The island's remoteness protects it, but that same remoteness makes it expensive and difficult to reach, which is exactly why it stayed this beautiful. Number 2. Jervis Bay on the New South Wales south coast, 3 hours south of Sydney by car, close enough for a weekend trip, yet unknown to most international travellers. Jervis Bay holds a Guinness World Record that sounds made up, but isn't. It has the widest sand on Earth, measured by any scientific standard. Not the widest sand in Australia or the South Pacific. The widest sand measured anywhere on the planet. When scientists tested the sand at Whitehaven Beach in Jervis Bay using spectrophotometry, they found it reflected 98% of light. That's wider than printer paper. That's wider than fresh snow in Antarctica. When you walk on it, the sand squeaks like styrofoam under your feet because the grains are so perfectly round and uniform, they literally squeak against each other with each step. The bay itself curves for 16 kilometers, protected by headlands on both the northern and southern ends. Point perpendicular to the south rises like a wall from the sea, and Bowen Island to the north creates a natural windbreak. This geographic protection creates calm, clear water, even when the Tasman Sea outside churns with southerly storms that can generate waves 5 meters high. The watercolor shifts depending on where you stand. Near the shore, it's pale aqua, almost white, where the sand is so shallow the water barely covers it. Move 20 meters out, and it deepens to turquoise. In the shipping channel that runs down the center of the bay, where the depth drops to 50 meters, the water turns deep sapphire blue. On sunny days, the contrast is so sharp that photographers don't need to edit their images at all. The colors look oversaturated straight out of the camera because they genuinely are that vivid in real life. But Jervis Bay has a secret weapon that the Caribbean can't match, something that makes it unique even among Australia's spectacular coastline: dolphins. Not the occasional dolphin sighting you might get on an expensive whale-watching tour where you're lucky to see a distant fin. Jervis Bay is home to a resident pod of over 100 bottlenose dolphins that live in the bay year-round, feeding in the seagrass meadows and playing in the wake of boats. You can kayak out into the bay at sunrise when the water is glass calm and the tourists are still sleeping, and chances are, better than 50-50, that dolphins will swim right up to your kayak. They're genuinely curious animals. They'll surface next to you, close enough to touch, make eye contact, check you out with that intelligence that makes you wonder what they're thinking, and then dive under your boat just because they can. It's one of the most reliable wildlife encounters in Australia, and it happens in water that looks like it belongs in a Corona commercial. The bay also contains one of the largest natural harbours in the Southern Hemisphere. The Royal Australian Navy has a base here, established decades ago. But instead of ruining the area, the naval presence has actually protected it. Half of the bay is a marine park where fishing is prohibited. That protection has created an underwater ecosystem so healthy that you can snorkel off the beach and see more fish than most people see on expensive dive trips in Thailand or the Philippines. The marine diversity here is staggering. Schools of yellowtail kingfish patrol the deeper water. Rays glide over the sandy bottom. Blue gropers, some as large as a small child, cruise past snorkelers without fear. And if you're lucky, you might spot a weedy sea dragon, one of Australia's most bizarre and beautiful marine creatures camouflaged among the kelp. The town of Huskisson sits on the bay's northern shore. Population 750 people. There's a brewery, a handful of cafes, and not a single high-rise building in sight. You can rent a beach house 50 meters from water that looks like liquid turquoise, and on most weekdays, you'll share the beach with maybe 5 other people. Number 3. Rottnest Island, 19 kilometers off the coast of Perth in Western Australia. Rottnest Island sits just offshore from Perth, accessible by a 30-minute ferry ride. The island is car-free by law. You explore by bicycle or on foot. There are 63 beaches scattered around the island's coastline, and at least 20 of them look like they were stolen from a Caribbean travel brochure. The catch is that nobody outside of Western Australia seems to know this island exists. The basin is the island's most famous beach. It sits in a protected cove where the water is so calm it looks like a swimming pool. The sand is white, the water is transparent turquoise. And on the headland above, Norfolk pines provide shade and frame the view like something from a resort catalogue. But here's the difference. This isn't a resort. There are no beach bars, no jet skis for rent, just pure beach. You can swim out to a pontoon anchored 30 meters offshore, lie in the sun, and watch schools of fish swim beneath you in water clear enough to see individual grains of sand on the bottom. Rottnest is also home to the quokka, a small marsupial that's been called the happiest animal on Earth because it looks like it's constantly smiling. Quokkas are friendly, curious, and will approach humans looking for attention. The internet turned quokkas into a meme, but meeting them in person is genuinely surreal. You're standing on a beach that looks like the Bahamas, and a small furry animal that looks like a cross between a kangaroo and a teddy bear waddles up to investigate your picnic. The island has a dark history. It was used as a prison in the 19th century. The name Rottnest comes from Dutch explorers who mistook the quokkas for giant rats and called it Rottnest or Rat's Nest. But that grim past makes the island's current beauty even more striking. What was once a place of suffering is now one of the most peaceful spots in Australia. Parker Point on the island's eastern side offers snorkeling that rivals the Great Barrier Reef. You can wade in from the beach and immediately find yourself surrounded by tropical fish, sea turtles, and occasionally dolphins. The reef here is healthy, colourful, and easily accessible. No boat required, no dive certification needed, just mask, snorkel, and fins. Number 4, Great Keppel Island off the Queensland coast near Rockhampton. Great Keppel Island was once home to a large resort that marketed itself as the Whitsundays for people who couldn't afford the Whitsundays. The resort closed in 2008, and for over a decade, the island sat essentially abandoned. That abandonment turned out to be the best thing that could have happened to it. Without the resort crowds, Great Keppel returned to its natural state. 17 beaches ring the island's coastline. Most of them are accessible only by hiking trails through the coastal bushland. The main beach, Fisherman's Beach, stretches for nearly 2 kilometers. The sand is powder fine white. The water is that specific shade of blue-green that only exists when sunlight filters through shallow water over white sand. But the hidden gem of Great Keppel is Monkey Beach on the island's northern shore. You reach it by hiking 40 minutes through forest, or by kayaking around the headland from the main beach. The effort keeps most visitors away. When you arrive, you often have the entire beach to yourself. The water here is protected by a reef just offshore, creating a natural lagoon where the water stays calm even when the ocean beyond gets rough. The reef at Monkey Beach is alive and thriving. Unlike many Australian reefs that have suffered bleaching in recent years, the Keppel Island's reef system remains surprisingly healthy. You can snorkel here and see hard corals in shades of purple and orange, soft corals swaying in the current, and so many fish that the water seems to shimmer with their movement. Green sea turtles are common visitors, surfacing to breathe before diving back down to graze on seagrass. If you're lucky, you might spot a manta ray cruising through the deeper water beyond the reef, its wings spanning 2 meters across. The island feels genuinely remote, despite being just a 45-minute ferry ride from the mainland. At night, the Milky Way stretches across the sky so bright you can read by starlight. The only sounds are waves lapping the shore and the occasional call of a seabird. It's the kind of solitude people pay thousands of dollars to experience in the Maldives, available here for a fraction of the cost. The island has basic camping facilities and one small eco-resort that accommodates about 40 guests. That's it. No day tripper crowds like you get at the Whitsundays. No cruise ships anchoring offshore. Just beaches that would be mobbed with tourists if they were literally anywhere else in the world, sitting here in near total isolation. Number 5. Moreton Island, the third largest sand island in the world, off Brisbane. Moreton Island is weird. It's an island made entirely of sand. No rock, no soil, just sand that's been piling up for thousands of years until it formed an island 40 kilometers long. And despite being made of sand, it has freshwater lakes, dense forest, and beaches that look Caribbean. The western side of the island faces Moreton Bay, protected from the Pacific Ocean by the island itself. This creates conditions perfect for that Caribbean look. Calm water, white sand, shallow depths. The Tangalooma wrecks on the western shore are a cluster of 15 ships deliberately sunk in the 1960s to create a breakwater for small boats. Now those rusted hulls create an artificial reef that's become one of Queensland's best shore-based snorkeling sites. You can wade into waist-deep water at the Tangalooma wrecks and be instantly surrounded by schools of tropical fish. Yellowtail, kingfish, trevally, and wobbegong sharks cruise through the wreck structures. The water is clear enough to see the entire wreck from the surface. And because the wrecks sit in such shallow water, you don't need scuba gear, just a mask and snorkel. But Moreton Island's real secret is the Blue Lagoon, a freshwater lake in the island's interior. The lake sits in a depression in the sand dunes, fed by rainwater that filters through the sand and stays crystal clear. The water is blue, the sand around the lake is white, and if you ignore the eucalyptus trees at the lake's edge, you could convince yourself you're looking at a Caribbean cenote. The island is also where wild dolphins come to feed every evening. At the Tangalooma Resort, staff have been hand-feeding a pod of wild bottlenose dolphins for decades. But this isn't a captive experience. The dolphins are completely wild. They choose to come to the beach. And on any given evening, between 6 and 10, dolphins will swim into knee-deep water, take fish from visitors' hands, and then swim away. It's an interaction that feels impossible in 2024, yet it happens every single night. Number 6. Vivonne Bay on Kangaroo Island, South Australia. Kangaroo Island sits off the South Australian coast, a 90-minute ferry ride from the mainland. The island is famous for wildlife. Kangaroos, wallabies, koalas, sea lions, and fairy penguins all live here in abundance. But buried in the middle of all that wildlife is Vivonne Bay, a beach that looks so Caribbean it seems geographically impossible. Vivonne Bay stretches for 5 kilometers in a gentle arc. The sand is white, the water is turquoise and transparent. Because the bay faces south, protected by headlands on both sides, it stays calm, even when storms hammer the island's southern coast. The beach has been called one of Australia's best beaches multiple times, and yet on most days, you'll count the people there in single digits. The water at Vivonne Bay comes from the Southern Ocean, which means it's cold. In summer, it reaches about 20 degrees Celsius. That's 8 degrees colder than the tropical north. But that cold water brings nutrients that create an ecosystem unlike anything in the real Caribbean. Giant kelp forests grow just offshore. Australian fur seals haunt the rocky points at both ends of the bay. And the fishing is extraordinary. Locals cast lines from the beach and pull in species that would cost you hundreds of dollars to catch on a charter boat elsewhere. The town of Vivonne Bay has a population of about 200 people. There's a general store, a jetty where recreational fishers unload their catch, and not much else. The bay sits at the end of a road that winds through farmland and eucalyptus forest. There are no resorts, no beach clubs, no infrastructure designed to handle mass tourism. It's a beach that looks world-class but remains defiantly local. So why don't more people know about these places? Why do Australians fly 14 hours to Hawaii when they have this at home? Part of it is access. Many of these locations require planning. You can't just show up. Lord Howe Island has a waiting list. Rottnest Island accommodation books out months in advance. Great Keppel Island requires a ferry and then either camping or staying at a small eco-resort. These aren't places you can visit on a whim during a weekend road trip. Part of it is marketing. The Caribbean has spent billions of dollars over decades convincing the world that it's the only place to find perfect beaches. Australia, by contrast, has barely marketed these hidden gems at all. Tourism Australia focuses on the Great Barrier Reef, the Whitsundays, and Sydney Harbour. These lesser-known spots get a fraction of the attention. But part of it is also that Australians like keeping these places quiet. There's an unspoken agreement among locals that some beaches should stay secret, that not every paradise needs to be turned into a resort, that it's okay if you have to hike 40 minutes to reach perfection, because that hike keeps the crowds away. The irony is that these Australian beaches often outperform their Caribbean counterparts in objective measures. The water is cleaner because there's less coastal development. The marine life is healthier because Australian environmental protections are stricter. And the beaches themselves are often more pristine because fewer people visit them. If you're planning to visit any of these places, here's what you need to know. Book early, especially for Lord Howe Island and Rottnest Island. Accommodation disappears fast during peak season. Be prepared for limited amenities at these. These aren't resort destinations. You won't find beach bars or water sports rentals at most of these locations. Bring your own snorkel gear. The best underwater experiences happen right off the beach, but you need your own equipment. And finally, respect the environment. These places have stayed beautiful precisely because they haven't been overrun. Don't be the person who ruins it for everyone else. The question isn't whether Australia has Caribbean quality beaches. It does. The question is whether we want them to become the next Caribbean. Crowded, commercialized, and covered in resorts. Or whether we're content to let them remain secret, accessible only to those willing to put in the effort to find them. What do you think? Should Australia promote these hidden beaches to the world? Or should they stay quiet? Have you been to any of these locations? What was your experience? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video valuable, hit that subscribe button. I cover hidden Australian destinations every week. And if you want to see where else Australia hides its best beaches, the next video is already on screen. Click it now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.